People look at dreamers and think they're creatives. Don't assume just because you're dreaming you're a creator. You have to add courage.
What happens before Genesis 1:1?
The answer from God's vantage point is, before Genesis 1:1, God was dreaming.
Let there be light. What was that light? Because there was no sun.
If you look at the end in the book of Revelation, the city of light has no need for the sun. God emanates light. He doesn't need a source of light. He is the source of light.
You are listening to the Mind Shift podcast. My name is Erwin McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus. We are here in KL, Malaysia, and our amazing, great friend, Kevin Liu.
Welcome.
We're in your space. Thank you so much. We're also surrounded by your art.
Yep.
So thank you. You're a phenomenal artist.
My pleasure.
Great friend. Dad, how are you today?
I'm doing actually really well. My first night where I slept 8 hours in Malaysia. So I feel like I've now shifted into this time zone, which just means when I go back home, it's going to be brutal.
I did think about that. I was like, I slept well. Well, it's the beginning of the end.
Yes.
Let's start this process over next week.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so we're here and we were having this incredible car ride over the first day that you guys picked us up and took us to the office. And we kind of want to carry on from our first conversation. Mm-hmm. And we had kind of sprung the podcast on you last minute and you were so willing to just jump on here. But I would love to just talk about why we're here. We're here for Collective.
Yeah. You're here because we are running our conference called this year's focus is creative. So it's our collective conference that we don't actually do them every year. So we do them when we feel that there's a message that we want to bring across to the people in our city. Yep.
And this year's theme?
This year's theme is Am I Dreaming? It's focusing on maybe too often people are just doing whatever they have to do mindlessly. So we want people to really be captivated by the future again, be captivated by what's ahead, and to be curious, to be excited about everything that's ahead of us. So we just want to bring that back to the people. Yeah.
I actually thought that the subject that you asked Aaron to deal with in his session is very interesting. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yes, I remember what we wanted to talk about.
Oh.
So wait, I'm going to answer. We would talk about that, but then
answer my question.
You had him help you with you had my dad help you with your talk.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then I said, can we do that live where we talk about it? Oh, that's what it was, right?
That's an epiphany. An epiphany.
An epiphany.
Yeah.
All right, no, but to answer the question, you're doing what I do.
Well,
I ask.
I don't know if it was Pastor Kev. I don't know if it was Pastor Kev. I think I was on a phone call with one of your guys, Kirsten, what's his official role for you guys?
He's head of creative.
He's head of creative.
Yep.
And so we were talking about different ideas to talk about, and I asked what's a pain point that you guys are facing in whether it's Malaysia or in Southeast Asia or in your church, and he was talking about how creativity as a luxury. Creativity is seen as a luxury to most people, whether it's business or church or organizations. It's not seen as something that is necessary or essential, but as a luxury. Do you find that to be true?
Oh yeah. I think just the mention of the word being creative, you have to be either a singer, a dancer, a photographer, or a movie director. Other than that, no one deserves to be creative. And that's Asian,
It could even be seen as an inappropriate use of time, energy, and money.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
Right?
Yep, that's true.
And so they'll look at you going, wait a minute. Why are you focusing on being creative? You're wasting money.
That's right.
You're getting off the main message or the main principle. So creativity is almost seen as an enemy of intentionality.
Yeah.
But it's actually an enemy of being utilitarian. But Aaron, you didn't tell us what you're going to talk about.
No, so I mean that's I think it's the topic of my talk is having this conversation around creativity as a luxury. Because my background, it made so much sense because I was pacing my house talking to Kirsten. Kirsten. Why do I call him Kirsten?
Kaysen.
Because I'm a terrible human.
No, that's fine.
Kaysen.
Maybe his American name is Kirsten.
I don't know what it is. I'm doing what you do sometimes, Dad. I'm so bad. Now I'm just placing blame. So we're talking to Kaysen about this idea of creativity being a luxury, and my background was with luxury goods, working at a French or Parisian luxury good menswear, women's wear brand out of New York, and this idea of like, I was selling luxury goods, I was selling women's shoes, and it seemed like such a waste of my potential, which I think to some degree it was. And then I moved back home and had, no salary and no job, which I think people don't realize. Couldn't get a car. I had to live at home, and you gave me, I think it was like $150 a month for gas for the car. I couldn't fill up because I didn't have a car, and which I thought was very funny. And so it sent me back on this this mental journey of the last 10 years of getting to this point where we're back making luxury goods, we're back building the church, and how important it is. And maybe the thing that I care most about in my life is people seeing creativity as an essential nature to the whole.
Yeah.
That is the foundation of it. And so I've been just trying to figure out how to connect that to scriptures. And we were watching A Quiet Place last night.
Oh yeah.
We dragged you out to a movie.
No, you didn't. I willingly went.
They never brought my popcorn, so I stole his.
I'm sorry.
Or the snacks.
Why are you sorry?
Yeah, we should ask for it.
We should go back.
We should go back and
we should go back and get a refund.
Go back. I'm
a king of refund.
But king of refund.
Yeah.
But I ended up writing. My dad got kind of annoyed with me, and he's like, "Who are you texting?" I was like, "I'm not texting. I'm writing down ideas about this talk because I just had this thought in my brain. So I'm not going to talk about it now. But this idea of creativity as luxury. So, Dad, how do you feel about creativity as a luxury? You wrote The Artisan Soul. I remember telling you one of your core values at Mosaic is creativity is a natural result of spirituality.
Yes.
This is something you've lived and died on. How do you feel about creativity?
Well, it's sort of like a softball pitch, right, for me, because when I wrote An Unstoppable Force in 1999, came out in 2000, I had fought for 10 years over this singular value system, this belief that creativity is a natural result of spirituality. And I remember when I first proposed this value system to the community of faith, the church that I was working with, helping at the beginning, they adamantly were against this principle. The senior pastor said, if I can quote him almost directly, humans are worker bees, and what they really need is work to give them meaning. They just need a task. You're asking them to be creative, which is not what humans intrinsically need. And then his associate said, you're putting way too much undue pressure on people by telling them they need to be creative. And then I remember I was in New York in a secular environment pitching the same principle, that creativity is intrinsic to the human essence. And I remember the other expert in the room said, do you realize what you're saying and what kind of anarchy that would create? He said, if everyone saw themselves as creative, it would create anarchy. Who would do the work? And I told him, I said, your argument is the same argument that was used to hold people in slavery. If we set all these people free, do you know what kind of anarchy that would create? Every time you try to control people, you think that you're solving the problem of human anarchy. And creativity is in many ways seen as the enemy of civility. Right. The way you get people to act right, to conform, to fit in, to hold to the rules and laws, is you sublimate or destroy their uniqueness and creativity. And so I've been fighting for this for 40 years because I do believe every human being is intrinsically creative. And yes, if everyone starts pursuing their intrinsic creativity, it may be a little chaotic and there may be a season of anarchy, but the only potential best future for humanity is on the other side of unlocking human creativity.
Wow. I love it.
How do you find creativity accepted in the culture here in Malaysia and KL?
I think there's so many roadblocks when we talk about creativity in our context, because creative people are seen as lazy, right? Like, oh, so you're lazy. That's why you're finding all these ways to do whatever you're supposed to do, following what we have instructed you to do. So that's one roadblock. And for me, I don't know. I always have that desire to do something different, and you know, if it works, all right, let's fiddle with it and try another way. So I recently, someone asked me a question, and he's asked me, say, so Kevin, why are you so curious about everything. So what he was trying to refer to was because I started growing plants in my house. And everybody thought I love plants. But I actually don't, because they die on me in the earlier stages. So I just keep buying them, learning how to grow them, because I'm curious how to keep them alive.
Well, you're supposed to water them.
Oh yeah, I'm supposed to water them. Don't overwater them. But after I got a hang of it, I've lost interest. I'm moving on to the next thing. So I think our culture, we don't talk about this enough, and we don't celebrate it enough. So people kind of like, yeah, maybe it's not for everybody. You are the unique one. That's why you think like this. Yeah.
I was the biggest maybe antagonist against that core value growing up. I remember
You told me you could not join Mosaic because you did not agree with the 5th core value.
But also, how old was I?
14, 15.
Yeah, let's go 13. Sub high school. I was a young.
But
13.
I love the fact that you're being defiant. I did.
I did. Because I think I've always had a desire or this internal feeling and want to be accepted, right? To belong.
Yeah.
And it's never worked out that way. And the way that I expected it, right? Even from as a little kid, I told him there's an award that we find out in in year 5, or not year 5, it'd be kindergarten, like our elementary school, and it was for perfect attendance. And I came home and I told my mom and dad, and I was like, I'm gonna have perfect attendance. All I have to do is spend the next 13 years going to school every day of the year. And it's a story you laugh because it's a story he uses. This is the great thing now, is that I get to use the stories he's used on me, but from my perspective. And then my world was shattered and the trauma began because my dad sat me down and said, hey buddy, what you don't know is I'm taking you to El Salvador in about 3 weeks.
Actually, that was Japan.
I thought it was Japan.
It was
It was
Japan.
Japan.
Yeah.
Because I went to school to take you to Japan, and you got upset saying, I can't leave. I'm going to get perfect attendance when I graduate from high school. And I'm going, what is a first grader or whatever it was?
I was 5, sir.
Yeah.
I was 5. And you did this to me. I am this way.
I looked at him and I tried not laughing hysterically.
So
I thought he has a goal. I mean, I love the fact that he wanted a perfect attendance when he graduated from high school. I said, buddy, you are never going to win that award.
That's what parents do.
So here's the thing. You have 2 sons.
Yep.
Zan,
Yep.
and then your older son, Aiton. Yeah. I wanted to be Aiton. I believed I could be Aiton. This potential Ivy League, Oxford, I had all this potential that he has actually actualized. He's brilliant.
Not yet fully, but
it's in his next steps.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You think so, right?
Yeah.
Your son is massive, massively intellectual, intelligent, smart, whatever. Zan is a wild stallion.
Woohoo!
Zan
Whatever happened to him, man?
Man, we went out to dinner the other night, and how old's Zan now?
8.
He's 8. And we were at this long, eating Japanese yakitori. And I was like, I want to hang out with Zan. And he's just scribbling away, drawing these amazing drawings.
Oh, yeah.
He drew me drawings. I'm trying to convince him to draw the Mindshift logo. And
yeah. He's supposed to work on that.
I hope so.
Yep.
But it's good to have 2 different sons like that. One who can graduate from Harvard,
yeah.
and the other one who can hire Harvard graduates.
But I'm giving you the villain origin story. So I wanted to be Aiton, but then I was forced to become Zan.
when he's old enough to listen to this, that'll be fun.
But we'll already be friends. But I think there was that I had that thing, that inner turmoil, because I knew I loved my dad. I wanted to be close to my dad, and he was this wild, creative man. But then I really also wanted to be someone who played by the rules and was accepted and belonged inside of this cookie cutter society. And so I had a dad who gave me the option of the red pill and the blue pill,
Yep.
And very early on, I had no choice. There were just 2 red pills.
You choose the red pill or
Yeah.
the red pill.
And so
Dark red, light red.
but I think a lot of people are out there that want to do that. They even, I think they approach this idea and they're too afraid to make a decision on whether they want to open their reality and their mind up to what could possibly be. And there's some people who just have no interest at all, who are just going, I don't need to take risks. Being a creative would be taking risks. I'm okay building on someone else's creativity, right? Because I was listening to a podcast, the same Simon Sinek podcast that I was talking about, and Simon hates to some degree the ideology philosophy of Jack Welch. He talks about it very specifically. This massive.
I'm not a big fan of Jack Welch's philosophy either.
Right. So this idea of 9 to 5 and this kind of workaholic culture but I see the value in utilitarian nature as well. Do you ever fight with your inner creativity at all? Do you ever wrestle with it? Either of you?
I do. I think sometimes you get tired. Like if all these creative ideas bursting out, and then you just keep pioneering and plowing. After a while, you just kind of like, okay, maybe I should just take a break. Just follow the rules, go with the flow. Don't upset anybody. Just make everybody happy except me. I think to me, that's struggle internally. That, maybe too creative, maybe too out there. It's time to come home, back to the shore kind of idea a bit.
Yeah, I think going back to that statement of that you said that dreamers are seen, or no, creatives are seen as lazy. Your theme for the conference is, am I dreaming? Am I dreaming?
Yeah.
And my answer is yes, you're only dreaming until you act. That and that the challenge is people look at dreamers and think they're creatives.
Right.
Dreaming is like it's like the pregame warm-up for being a creative.
Yeah.
And every creative dreams,
but
not every dreamer creates. And so what happens is if you're a dreamer, but you're bound by fear, you do not create. If you're a dreamer and now you're fueled by courage or faith, then you become a creator.
Yeah.
And so there is like maybe that twilight zone space where dreamers can be seen as lazy because they don't just want to plug in. So they resist the option of standardization, but they haven't yet created the option of being a creative.
Yeah.
So they're in that limbo state of you're just a dreamer. And I would say if you're just a dreamer, you're in the warm-up game for creating, but you're not yet a creator. So don't assume just because you're dreaming you're a creator.
Yeah.
But you have to add courage. And because every real creator I know, like you, and like Aaron, and like Mariah, is driven to work.
Yeah.
Because the creativity consumes you. And I would say creative people, truly creative people, work harder than people who are just doing their job. And when you have volunteers, in fact, I would have people who who would come on staff and go, "Hey, can I go do this as a side thing?" And I go, "No, go do that as a job and do us as a side thing." Because what I want your passion.
Yeah.
I don't want your obligation. I want your passion.
Yes.
And because the moment you're just working out of obligation, your creative energy is no longer available to us. I want people's creative energy. I want their passion energy.
Yeah.
When you get that, you get the best part of them. Even if it's only 20%,
that's right.
It's more powerful than the 80% you paid for. And so there's this odd kind of dynamic there. I think the world moves forward through the creative edges.
Yeah.
And I know you agree with me and in that because it's it's history. The pioneers, the innovators, the outliers, the inventors. They may be 2% of the world, but they create 100% of our future.
Yeah.
And those who do not live in that space, they do everything possible to keep the world the same.
Okay, so now I'd like you to answer the question.
Which
I
question?
loved what you said. I took so many notes. This is your talk. Yeah? you have to talk on this.
I don't know what I'm going to talk on, but what's the question I didn't answer? This is why people love the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know. Couldn't tell you. The question was, what's the inner turmoil like? Because I know because you're a businessman. You're also You've been a board member on so many boards. You have a board. You have people that you have phenomenal creatives that you speak into their lives, but they're also high-end CEOs as well. So you see this on probably a more dynamic way than most people because of the clientele that you work with on your one-on-one mastermind and your consulting. But also you are that. You've been a businessman, you've been an entrepreneur, you start little businesses, big businesses, you invest in things, like you just have done this. What's that inner turmoil like of when you need to be, that CEO business mind to then you need to be that creative, someone who writes a book. And really this book that you've written now, The 7 Frequencies of Communication, it's you in the past you've been able to just disappear. You could take a month where Mosaic was fine. You did a bunch of work before and Mosaic runs. And then you were just writing, and it would show up to a meeting here and there. But you had to do it all during this season. Yeah. You wrote every day, you led every day, you were on calls every day. I don't know how you physically did it. Then you had me yelling at you being like, you shouldn't be picking up the phone, you need to be writing. You need this book deadline. How do you deal with it internally?
Yeah. I think one thing is that you always have this little gnawing thing inside of you.
It's called your son.
That you may never create the most beautiful thing that you're capable of creating. And it feels so elusive. It's like chasing a horizon. And so I don't know if what is being created is that beautiful thing that I long to create. I just know it's closer. And it pulls you forward. And so there's a part of it, I think it's almost like a madness that you're trying to find this thing that is calling you. But on the flip side, I also think of it as like a parent. I think a creator that just starts something, gives it birth, and then doesn't nurture it is a bad parent.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, like 40 years ago, I had a dream of what a church could look like.
Yeah.
I imagined a community of faith that was filled with innovators and pioneers and entrepreneurs and creatives and artists, and that was very liquid and dynamic in its way of engaging the world, and would not simply be relevant, but would be aspirational. The world would want to become like us. And then when I started Mosaic, it would have been easy 6 months later or a year later to go, okay, there it is, it's done. But it would have been like giving birth to something, but not parenting it. It took decades to parent Mosaic so that it would exist and be a real expression in the world. And it's like nurturing the idea. I mean, I've had, the concepts of mind shift were 40 years of experiences and learning. But if I had not nurtured it into becoming a book, and then crafting that book so it could have the best chance of being viral in the world. And then ironically, you're parenting it afterwards, because if you don't do the hard work of getting the message out and connecting to people, it's just going to sit there on a shelf. And that person who says, I'm writing this book, and if just one person reads it and their life has changed, I'll be satisfied. That person doesn't know how to steward an idea, because if you only want to impact one person, just have lunch. You write a book because you're trying to help hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have a radical life-altering experience through what you've written. And so I think everything you create requires nurturing. And even, we've launched the Arena together, and launching it was fun, exciting, and easy. And frankly, it's like, the first act of having a child is fun, easy and exciting, right? Because
I don't have any kids.
What?
I don't have any kids.
No, sex is the fun part.
Yep.
It's parenting them from birth to 18 to 21. That's the hard work.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people don't realize that if you're going to be a true creative, you have to be committed to the nurturing of that idea until it grows and exists outside of you.
It's really helpful and important.
And difficult.
And what?
Difficult.
And difficult.
Yeah.
But it's back to plants.
Yeah.
It's keeping the plant alive.
Yeah.
The fun part is buying the plant.
Yeah.
Putting it in the beautiful vase and the pots, you know? When you said it, I was like, oh, I need plants in my house. And then I was like, but then I need to be in my house.
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
Like, Kevin, is there a painting in your imagination that you are not able yet to paint?
Of course, there are many.
And are some of these reflections of you trying to get to that painting?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's stops along the way, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But each stop is a beautiful expression of art.
Yeah. Because it's just, when you paint, it's not just the outcome of what you have created, but it's also the moment, how you're feeling and what you're trying to express. Do you get there? So there's a lot of all this emotion that comes with a piece of artwork, and it's not. I think if I think that I've painted the ultimate painting, I probably won't paint again because I'm done, right? And it's always that desire to keep pursuing. And at this point, why do I think like this? Why do I paint like this? And it just makes that whole journey more challenging and fun. And yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. Oh, wait. And then do you want to talk about writing talks, or should we just save that for another thing?
No.
Let's just follow this stream through and see if we get to the other place.
So one conversation that I've been having inside of my brain, and then we were watching the movie last night, it's kind of been unfolding. And it all started with Kaysen, but it was a different person named Kirsten, so I don't know who Kaysen is. But really, it was this conversation. I went back and I called my dad about, this idea of creativity as seen as a luxury, and then, Genesis 1:1. I brought it back to scripture of, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I called my dad, and a lot of my thoughts maybe are morbid in that I think about our mortality often. And not that I'm afraid to die. I'm probably more afraid to lose him, to lose my family, than I am to lose my own self. And maybe that's selfish, because for me, the removal of myself would mean that I am somewhere that they cannot be, or that they aren't. But if they go somewhere that I can't go, then maybe it's just like this longing to be where they are, where I'm not, right? So I've looked at that internally as well. But this idea that God created the place that we come from and will exist, and the place that we will go before He created us. That our starting point in our forever existence was already created before we ever stepped into that reality, which I thought was really important and interesting. But then last night, I had this question of what happens before chapter 1, verse 1.
Well, I do think what you said.
No, I'm asking that question.
No,
but I'm asking that question right now, that we can go to the other thing. What happens before chapter 1, verse 1?
What do you mean, what happens?
Okay, say the thing you want to say. No, go. Say the thing you want to say.
I thought when you shared with me this concept for the first time, that God created a home for us before He created us, by creating creation, and then creating this concept, this place of heaven, as another home for us. And when you shared with me that from the beginning to the end, God is creating a home for us, it blew me away. And I thought it was one of the most brilliant thoughts of that God never creates us to be displaced, alone, or homeless. He always creates us first. He creates a home for us and then creates us. And I thought about when you said that, how even the womb is that. Like, we're formed inside of a womb, inside of someone else's being. And He creates a home for us, even when we're not capable of surviving. And so you said it so quickly, Aaron, and I just want to restate, I thought it was one of the most brilliant thoughts someone shared with me. And I don't want to overlook that. What happened before Genesis 1:1, I have no idea.
But how come we don't talk about what happened before? It's something that my brain has always gone so stuck on.
But isn't that in the scripture where before you were formed, I knew you?
Yeah.
But that's about us.
Yeah.
He knew me before He formed me.
Yep.
He had a thought.
Yeah.
We're going to have fun tonight.
Yeah.
And then I happened.
I mean, it's a great question because, for a long time, scientists believed that the proof that there was no God is that the universe was infinite. And so scientists really wanted an infinite universe, because if you have an infinite universe, you don't need a creator.
Right.
And now that science has overwhelmingly said the universe has a clear beginning, that actually works against atheism. Because once you have a clear beginning, then you have to have a progenitor, someone who creates that first act. And because the one thing we know from science is that something always comes from something, that something cannot come from nothing.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think there was, in fact, I do not believe there was nothing before Genesis 1:1. But the something that existed may have been in the imagination of God. Because we began this conversation with, am I dreaming?
Yes.
And the answer, I think, from God's vantage point is, before Genesis 1:1, God was dreaming.
Yeah. Yep.
He was imagining. But because God is not simply a dreamer, but a creator, he took the dream and he acted, and he created all that exists in us.
One of the I love that so much. One of the points, questions I have written down on my notes to talk about is really just this first section of the first 2 verses of the scriptures, because I really love what you just said. Like, before he was creating, he was dreaming. But that idea that now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. I don't know why, but I'm so drawn to this idea that there's now, the earth is this canvas of formless and emptiness. Right? But it's so descriptive in that nature that there was that there was. I think some of the Bible is some of the worst branded things in the world. Like the fruit of the Spirit just reminds me of underwear. Like, I don't understand. Like, it's just so terrible. Like, it's just the worst. And I often, like, when I'm in the shower thinking about weird things, I oftentimes think of like the things I would rebrand in the Bible. Like, if you just changed some of the wording. Right? Like, the product of the fruit of the Spirit is like literally the answer to life.
Oh, yeah.
The connection to something that is beautiful and holy and true will release all of the things you need in life to sustain peace.
Right, but the idea of fruit of the Spirit existed before the fruit of the loom. So
Right.
That's
right.
true.
Or did it? Because fruit of the loom also brought structure to something that was formless and empty.
Even Genesis 1:1, and I won't probably get this exactly right, but it says that that the Spirit was hovering over the water.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you look at 5 elements of wind, water, fire, earth, and I can't remember wood, and or if you use Chinese history, would be air.
Yeah.
Right. And 2 of those elements, water and wind, spirit, existed before light.
Yep.
We just don't talk about that.
That's right.
And so the Bible seems to be saying there was essence before creation. And it's interesting because science would tell us that the seminal thing you're looking for on any planet to determine if there's life is water. And if you have water, you have the potential for life.
Yeah.
And so then in Genesis 1, there's this little mysterious little combination of wind and water, but nothing exists in the universe until there's light.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you could go, was there a pre-universe, a pre-reality, a pre-existence that was liquid before there was light and everything was driven by energy? So it's just a little thought and side note.
Oh, I enjoy that.
I enjoyed that too.
Yeah.
And we're 80% water.
Oh, yes.
And so even human existence it's almost not creating out of nothing. In fact, it is not creating out of nothing. We absorb the essence of creation and then have consciousness, and we exist. It's kind of crazy. We are light, water, wind,
But
earth.
what was that light?
What would you ask?
Sorry.
No, I have a
because
question.
then let there be light. What was that light? Because there was no sun before that. Sun didn't come much later.
Or was the sun not allowed to enter the atmosphere?
Oh, I
That
never
was
thought about
empty.
that. Yeah, but
And formless.
Well, I mean, if you work from a biblical perspective, there was always light because God is light.
yes,
And yeah, and so if you look at the end in the book of Revelation, the city of light has no sun, no need for the sun, because it emanates light in its essence. And so when if you look at it from a biblical perspective, God emanates light. He doesn't need a source of light. He is the source of light. And so it's almost as if God is saying, let there be light. Let my essence be extended into the creation, not just into the creator, so that everything is still connected to him as an extension of him.
Yeah. Wow.
This is cool.
Yeah,
And,
it will take a while to settle in my brain.
yeah, I think some people are driving right now and their brains are fried.
What happened to the Mindshift podcast?
No, I've just been wanting to ask these questions because I don't know why, but the question of just like what happens before, why was this so important to start here? That what was created before we were created, that we were brought into existence, into a situation, into a reality where there was both beginning and end. Right?
Yeah.
Why was that important?
Yeah. And, when you go back again to the complexity of science, you just cannot find any proof that a single cell, could produce the complexity of any species, much less human beings. And you would think there'd be some example of it anywhere in the world where a single cell is somehow becoming this complex organism, and it just doesn't exist.
No.
And so the idea from a scientific perspective is this complexity has to happen after creation. And what the Bible is actually saying is, no, this complexity existed before the creation.
Yeah.
God had consciousness. God is life. God is consciousness.
Yeah.
God is light. God is life.
Yeah.
And out of his essence comes creation, and we become expressions of his essence.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this. I do like this. Okay, so okay, I don't know where we go from here, but I do like this conversation. And so maybe we start a new conversation? Or do you think we should?
How long have we been talking?
I actually don't know.
Anybody know?
Anybody know how long? 40 minutes? Oh, we should wrap this one up. And then we could talk again.
Let's wrap this one up and let's do a practical one on developing your talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
But are we done with this one?
I think so. Do you have anything to say?
I know. I just want to hear more.
I want to hear more too. Okay.
It's difficult when you're in a podcast. You want to learn
Yeah.
and you want to
Oh
contribute.
no. I give up so
And you
many
want to
times.
ask questions.
I do have like a closing question for you.
Wait, before you say that, I give up all the time, Kev, and I just start taking notes.
Yeah.
And I move the mic away.
Yes.
I just have a rolling note.
I have this extraordinary painting behind me.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Explain this work of art to us. What do you see? What should we see? What is the meaning behind it? Does it have a name?
Yeah.
How did you create it?
This particular painting, it's called Memory, if my memory serves me well. But when I created this, it is to remind me of my grandma's wooden house. So the scratches, because of how the wooden house is, and they are not those polished, but they were like wood that are quite rough. So we used to get a knife and just play with the house and just scrape it. So I wanted to create that, so to remind me of my growing up in my grandma's house. So I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the outcome myself. But when this was first exhibited, people just thought, oh, you just want to fill up the canvas with some stuff. And so I told them the story. Actually, it never connected with a lot of people until one time, one girl stood there, read the description, and started crying. And she was from China. And she said, this is amazing, because she started tearing because she missed home. And she saw all the scratches that reminded her of her house. And she wrote a big article after that about memory. So yeah, that's the work. And for many times it was made available to be sold, but every time I just stopped it. I thought maybe it's not for sale. So that's why it's still here until now. I don't know.
It still holds your memory.
And I actually find it very difficult in the very early seasons of my life when I started painting. I only sell it to you if you allowed me to go to your house to see it when I missed it. Really, I'm serious. It was a precondition. If you say no, I'm not going to sell to you. I don't care how much you pay me. But if I'm not allowed to see it again, no deal.
So it's like a membership club.
Yeah, maybe.
But they have the club and you get the membership.
yes. They pay for the maintenance.
And you just need to flip how you market that. You buy this painting. What comes with it is once a year I come to your home and share in that moment where we enjoy the painting together over tea.
Yeah, that sounds so much better.
I have a beautiful painting of yours that you did for me a couple of years ago. And I always just move it rooms with me. Oh, cool. Whatever room I spend more time in. Oh. But then I leave it in the room. If there's a guest, I put it in their room. But then if I miss it, I put it in mine. So it's really interesting that you say that. Because it doesn't have a committed wall. Like I was like, oh, I'll hang it in here. And then I started taking meetings in this other room and just put it right next to it.
There's no committed wall. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love this conversation.
Okay, so we're wrapping up this conversation about who knows what. But guys, we want to thank you so much for listening to the Mindshift podcast. We are here with Kevin Liu, and we're filming a couple episodes here in KL. If you haven't checked out what he's doing, you got to check him out online. Check out his Instagram. He's also going to hopefully be with us in the arena in October. Again, we're going to figure this out. Or at some point in the near future, he's coming to LA, and we're going to show your art. And we want you guys to be able to access him a little bit more, do this more in the future. Rate and review this podcast, and check us out on the next episode. We will see you guys next week.